now we're going to look at retrospective reserve. So we've calculated the prospective reserve, which is saying we're at t equals 7, the age is 42, what's the total value of benefits we're going to pay out, take away the total value of premiums that are going to come in. But what about we look at it from the other end? Okay, what happens if we ask the question that we start at t equals 0 and the end of the policy is t equals 20, and here we are at t equals 7. Okay, so what we did with the prospective reserve is we did a, okay, minus little a here. Okay, but that total money we've built up should have been built up by getting the premiums minus the benefits for this part. Okay, now you can really go to town on the sort of algebra of this, but the whole point of this course is to sort of play the sort of 28-year-old thing. What is the most efficient way of thinking about this? Okay, so instead of going through and accumulating and adjusting for mortality each year, the simple, elegant way to think about this is if I take the present value at t equals 0 of these premiums and these benefits between t equals 0 and t equals 7, okay, so for first 7 years, and then adjust for interest, okay, because in 7 years time the value of money is different, and also only so many have survived. Okay, so because when we did prospective benefits, we're saying this is for someone who is alive now after 7 years. Okay, if they're dead and it's all done. Okay, so we want the prospective reserves to be per survivor because we've already paid out in terms of the people who have died. Okay, so what we're going to do, the way to get the prospective reserve is to calculate the present value, okay, at t equals 0, let's say for first 7 years, and then adjust. So this calculation is 200,000, okay, times by the assurance function from the age 35 for 7 years. Okay, I should put a 1 in there to say it's a pure assurance rather than an endowment assurance. So that's a mistake I've been making all through, which is a bit annoying. And then I take off the 417.265 times a double dot 35.7. Okay, that will give me the present value, okay, at the time t equals 0 of how much reserve I should have per person who takes out the policy. Okay, but the reserve here is at present values time equals 7 per person still alive at time equals 7. Okay, so there's two things I have to do. I have to multiply by 1 plus I to the power of 7, so it's in time equals 7 money, and also instead of doing it for this is going to give me for the reserve divided by all 100 people who took out the policy. If I've only got 80 people left, that reserve needs to be divided across the 80 people, so it's shared by fewer people. Okay, so I need to divide by the survival rate to enable me to adjust for the fact that I've only got 80 people left to share that reserve across. Okay, so I times by that to adjust for the time value of money, and I divide by the survival rate, which is 7p35. Okay, and that will give me the retrospective reserve. Okay, it's just the value of the cash flows from the initiation of the policy to the time at which you're doing the retrospective reserve. So it is retrospective, it's looking at the cash flows that have happened in the past, but then you adjust for these two things. One is the time value of money, and the other is you've only got so many survivors to spread it across. Okay, so it's probably worth actually doing these calculations to illustrate them on I should also of course put in that 12 if I'm using the 417 figure calculation. It might be worth actually putting these calculations in to the spreadsheet. I'll probably do it with the just the annual premium and the end of year calculation, just to illustrate the point, rather than making it more complicated with the monthly and the immediate benefit. But I think it's worth doing that calculation to show what's actually going on. Okay, so let's do that. So after 7 years, so let's do prospective first, and the prospective reserve is going to be, well, let's have a 4213, which is equal to A42 minus 55 over 42 times 1 over 1.04 to the power of 13 times that. Okay, so that's A 41.42, and then A, which is the same calculation for assurance, which again is going to be A42 minus that over that times 1 over 1.04 to the power of 13 times that. Okay. So that should be capitalized. Let's change that. Okay, so that is giving us the numbers we need for the prospective calculation. So the reserve is equal to the total amount of benefits I need to pay out minus the total amount of premiums I'm going to receive in, which is that figure there. Okay, so that's what my reserve, prospective reserve, would be. Now let's look at the first 7 years. So we've got A 35.7. That is going to be equal to A35 minus that over that times 1 over 1.04 to the power of 7 times that. Okay, so that is the first 7 year of the annuity, and then the first 7 years of the assurance. Same principle. So A35 minus that over that times 1 over 1.04 to the power of 7 times that. Okay. So let's look at that as the present value. So we've got 200,000 times the assurance minus the pure pure premium, which is that one. I'm just doing it annually times that. Just check that. I've linked that incorrectly, haven't I? That should be the 401. Okay, so that's my reserve there, 1,259. So I've got 200,000 times the assurance plus the premium, the annual premium, doing it annually, times the annual annuity. Here I've got the annual annuity there, the assurance there, and I've got again the 401 times by the annuity and the 200,000 times by the assurance. Okay, but as we've said, we've got to adjust by 7 years of interest and the probability of survival for 7 years. Okay, so interest equals 1.04 to the power of 7 and survival equals the probability of surviving those 7 years is going to be 42 that over 35. So this figure needs to be multiplied by rolling up the interest and divided by the survival. Okay, and you see the two figures are the same. Okay, very strongly recommend you do that calculation yourself by hand and make sure you get those figures, okay, because that really confirms what's going on is working. What we're saying is 7 years into this policy, if we work out how much we need, that turns out to be the prospective reserve of 1259.89. If we work out how much we've got, and there's the sides are all around, it doesn't really matter, what we should have saved up by this point is 1259.89. So if the basis stays the same, if the premium is the pure premium and everything runs in line, everything happens according to expectations, the amount of money you have saved up will be the amount of money you calculate that you need to have saved up in order to pay out the last benefit. Okay, and that's how prospective and retrospective reserve join together.